We all know there's more than one way to become wealthy, but there are certain traits that almost all wealthy people have that most other people don't, and that's not just a coincidence. So today, we're gonna talk about that. My name is Charlie, and on this channel, I make videos about wealth building and achieving financial freedom so that you can free up your time to focus on the things that you truly care about. I'm sure there's been times in your life where if you tried, you could tell whether someone is wealthy or not just based on how they talk and act. So clearly there's something to that, and as an average person coming from a poor or middle class background, I believe that there are 3 basic stages you need to go through if you ever want to become wealthy: enlightenment, education, and execution. Or in other words, shifting your mindset about money, educating yourself about wealth building, and then finally acting on what you've learned. So if you're watching this channel, then you're already taking steps to educate yourself about wealth building, and hopefully you've been starting to execute on it as well. But in this video, we're going to take a step back and focus on the enlightenment stage, which again deals with how you can shift your mindset to think more like a wealthy person. And before you click away, I understand that it sounds crazy that shifting your mindset can make any sort of significant difference, but trust me when I say that the way wealthy people think is completely different from the way poor and middle class people think. So if you're not already rich or well on your way to getting there, I think you may want to keep watching. Now, a lot of the ideas that I'm going to talk about stem from this book, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker, which I definitely recommend that everyone watching this video reads. I'm not affiliated with the book in any way, I just think it's a great book and it helped me out a lot in my own wealth journey, which is still in progress by the way, so I'm not claiming to know everything, but I am well on my way, and the ideas that I'm going to talk about today were crucial in getting me to where I am now. So the first thing the author brings up is that your beliefs about money all stem from your past programming, or in other words, everything you heard, saw, and experienced while you were young. All of those memories and ideas remain in your subconscious mind and affect how you think as you get older. So if you were raised to think that money is just a means to obtain instant pleasures, that's more than likely what you'll believe as you get older, and you'll end up spending all of your money on things that you don't need because you think they're going to bring you happiness. Or if you're brought up in a situation where money was always tight and was more of a source of stress than happiness, you'll most likely always view money that way unless you take conscious action to change that mindset. Wealthy people see money as a source of future freedom and happiness, which is why they strive to save and invest as much as possible rather than spending everything they make. If you learn how to make your money work for you, you'll realize that $1,000 saved this year can become $2,000 within the next couple of years, and that can eventually become $4,000, which can eventually down the road become $100,000, and so on. Essentially, every dollar you save now can become worth exponentially more in the future. With that mindset, you'll be much more likely to want to save and invest your money rather than spending everything you can get your hands on. And don't think that simply making more money will solve your problem, because if you're wired to spend all of your money, you'll still find yourself spending it all even as your income increases. So in order to become wealthy, you need to shift your thinking to see money as a source of joy and future freedom. And as a side note, wanting to be wealthy is not being greedy or being selfish, as a lot of people who aren't wealthy will try to tell you. For one, there's not a limited amount of wealth to be had in the world, so just because one person is getting richer doesn't mean that someone else has to get poorer at their expense. And being wealthy gives you more than just the ability to create freedom and happiness for yourself. It also gives you a greater ability to help others and have a bigger positive impact on the world. When you're poor, you can't imagine spending your hard-earned money on anyone but yourself, but when you have a wealthy mindset, you can start to see money as a way to make positive change, both in your own life and in the lives of others. So as you're hopefully starting to see, there are a lot of ways that wealthy people think differently from poor and middle class people, and in Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, the author actually lists 17 specific ways, but I'm going to narrow it down here to those that I believe are the most essential and the ones that are most directly applicable to this channel. And of course, these are all generalizations, so these ideas don't apply to all wealthy people or all poor and middle class people, but it's just meant to give an insight into how each of these types of people tend to think. And the first idea is that while poor people want to be rich, wealthy people are committed to being rich. Meaning that wealthy people take action and take steps to actually generate wealth, whereas poor people just hope that they stumble across it or make excuses as to why they can't achieve it. And of course, everyone is born into different circumstances, so building wealth for some people is easier than for others, but making that a reason that you can't become wealthy is only going to ensure that you never get there. Everyone has the potential to become wealthy, you just need to believe that you can and will do it, then take the proper steps to actually achieve it. In a similar way, poor people tend to resent rich and successful people, while wealthy people tend to admire those rich and successful people. So in order to become rich, you need to learn to think of wealth in a more positive light. Because again, whether you realize it or not, not, your inner thoughts affect your outer reality. So if you think negatively of wealthy people, you're subconsciously preventing yourself from ever becoming wealthy. Now, the next major point is that poor people work hard for their money, while wealthy people have their money work hard for them. And don't get me wrong, your working income is important because you need it in order to form an initial base of wealth. But in order to truly become wealthy, you have to think beyond just your working income. So the poor and middle class mindset is to focus mostly on increasing your working income. So if you want to make more money, you either work more hours or you work extra hard to get a promotion and the small salary raise that comes with it. But as humans, we only have a limited amount of time. So if you're only focusing on working income, there's a hard cap on how much money you can make. And wealthy people understand this, so rather than focusing on increasing their working income, they focus on increasing their net worth. And to do that, they leverage their working income to generate even more income that they don't have to work for, which is also known as passive income. So essentially, the flow of your finances should look like this. Everything stems from your working income, so you can use that to pay for your basic necessities, and with everything you have left over, you should save and invest, which is one way of increasing your net worth. Because if you were to spend your extra working income frivolously on things that you don't really need, you'll never have enough money to save and invest, and therefore will never become wealthy. But if you start to save and invest, and you can develop a source of passive income, for example by trading stocks like I talk about on this channel, then that passive income also feeds into your savings and investments. And you can use it to pay for your more frivolous expenses without hindering your ability to generate wealth. So it is true that the higher your working income, the more money you have to save and invest. But once you hit a certain point, your passive income and investments will far exceed your working income. So it's really just not worth your time to focus too much on increasing that working income. And eventually your passive income will become so high that you don't need working income at all. And you're essentially just completely free at that point to spend your time the way you want to spend it. And in my opinion, that's the point at which you can really consider yourself truly wealthy. Now, another big idea is that wealthy people play the game to win, while poor people play the game not to lose. Or in other words, wealthy people aim to thrive and they act in spite of fear, while poor people aim to survive and let fear stop them from doing what's best for themselves. And a prime example of this is the stock market. Wealthy people understand that the stock market is an incredible way to build wealth and let your money work for you, despite it being slightly uncertain and volatile in the short term. But if you take a long-term view, you can see that the stock market always rises over time. And if you had invested, say, just $10,000 in the S&P 500 in the year 1990, it would be worth over $100,000 today. And of course, if you're watching this channel, you know that you could even generate far better returns than that if you throw in additional strategies like covered call writing. But many people with poor and middle class mentalities see the short-term volatility in the stock market and get scared away, which causes them to miss out on one of the biggest opportunities they have to build wealth. Some people assume that investing is only for wealthy people, but that way of thinking is completely backwards. The reality is that wealthy people are wealthy because they invest. So going back to our previous diagram, I mentioned that you should funnel your income to both savings and investments, which is true, but the key here is that you need both. A lot of poor and middle class people allocate far too much, if not all of their excess income to savings, and while that does technically increase their net worth, it's never going to make them wealthy. If you're only focusing on savings, it'll take you a very, very long time to save up enough money to retire, let alone to become wealthy. And in addition to that, every dollar you have saved, assuming it's in a standard savings account, is actually losing value every day due to inflation. So savings are important because you should always have some money that's not exposed to the short-term risk and volatility of the stock market, but just be careful not to keep more than necessary in savings. Personally, I keep about 6 to 12 months worth of living expenses in savings in case of an emergency, and if you have any large expenses coming up within the next few years, like buying a house, you should keep that money in savings, but otherwise you should invest the rest so that it can continue to grow. And speaking of growing, the next point is that wealthy people constantly learn and grow, while poor people assume that they already know. Whether it be exploring new ways to invest and grow their money, or just general self-improvement, wealthy people are constantly trying to learn and better themselves, and that mindset is exactly what got them to where they are in the first place. Because after all, becoming wealthy is not just about money, it's also about becoming the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. So you'll often hear poor and middle class people say things like, I don't have the time, or I don't have the money to take this course, or I already know everything about blah blah blah, or I tried investing in the stock market and it doesn't work for me. And those are the exact statements that are going to keep them poor. Whereas wealthy people say, if I can just learn 1 or 2 new things from this book or from this course, it's worthwhile to me. And wealthy people will look up to the people who have actually achieved whatever it is that they're trying to achieve and use them for ideas and inspiration. Because the fact is, if you're not as successful as you'd like to be, there's probably something that you don't know. Now, I'm not saying you should just go and spend a bunch of money on books and courses, but when you have a wealthy mindset, you'll realize that it can often be worthwhile to invest in yourself through education. And there's also a ton of free resources out there on pretty much anything you could ever want to learn. So if you're not yet where you want to be in life, don't try to make excuses as to why you can't get there. Instead, go out and learn something new and actually get there. And you can start by watching my most recent video where I show you my favorite option buying strategy right here in the bottom right corner of the screen. So I'll talk to you all in that next video.